So there's something that I find difficult to understand about you as a phenomenon, and that's that you're against polarization, but yet you call your opponents, like the postmodern feminists, the social justice warriors, you compare them to Nazis and to fascists.
No, I haven't compared them to Nazis.
You say they're like Marxists, and Marxists are just as bad as Nazis.
That's true, but I didn't compare them to Nazis. I compared them to Marxists.
Which are just as bad as Nazis.
Well, on an at the ethical level, yes, but it doesn't mean that they're they have the same political stripe. I don't like people who play group identity politics. They're promoting tribalism. Tribal societies are extraordinarily dangerous. And I think they're doing it primarily because of resentment. I certainly don't trust the Marxism, and why would I? I mean, how is it, you tell me after 150 million deaths, how it's okay to be a Marxist.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is the type of language you're using to qualify your opponents. It seems polarizing as well.
It depends on the opponents. I don't like Marxists. It isn't that I don't like them. There's no excuse for it. You call me polarizing if I objected to Nazis? Yes or no? If I objected to Nazis, am I polarizing or not?
But you see these people who want the gender-neutral pronouns. That's basically their main point. You see them...
That's their claimed main point.
But you think they're actually more dangerous than this?
It isn't that I think they're more dangerous than this. I know they're more dangerous than this. They wouldn't have put in compelled speech legislation if they weren't more dangerous than that.
Well, they would say, we don't want discrimination.
Yes, that's what they would say. But they still put in compelled speech legislation. And that never happened before in the history of British common law. And as I already pointed out, the American Supreme Court made it illegal in 1942. You can compel speech commercially. If you sell tobacco, you can make people put a warning on their package. You cannot tell people in the United States what they have to say. It's not constitutional.
Okay.
Now you can do it in Canada.
But
I don't appreciate that.
Jordan, you are all about taking responsibility for your actions. And then when I see already in our team also, we've had these really fierce discussions about things that you were saying. And there was already a schism in the team. So it seems like you are somehow a polarizing influence. And that concerns me, and I wonder if that concerns you too.
Well, of course it concerns me. The question is, what's the alternative? I've got no patience for Marxists. There's no excuse for it. There's no more excuse for it than there is for being a Nazi, in my estimation. And now maybe you should say, well, I should have patience for Nazis, but I don't.
Of course, that's not what I'm saying.
No, but it's not so clear that it's not what you're saying.
No,
because it is the Marxists that I'm objecting to. And somehow it's okay to be a Marxist. Because maybe you're for the poor, even though you're not. I don't think it's okay to be a Marxist. I don't even think it's a little bit okay to be a Marxist. I think maybe in 1918, when you didn't know any better, even though wise people had already warned against the danger for at least 50 years, then maybe you could have assumed that you would bring in the utopia with your ideas of equity. But it's 100 years later, and we've seen the carnage.
But you really see these people as the same thing as the Marxist, the Stalinist
they
Marxists.
call themselves Marxists. No, they're worse than the Stalinist Marxists. Because the Stalinist Marxists didn't know who Stalin was going to be. And we know who Stalin was, and we know who Mao was, and we know who Pol Pot was.
So let's make this clear. You really think that these people who are battling for social justice, against discrimination, that they want some sort of Stalinist regime?
Well, they wouldn't say that. No, of course they wouldn't say that. Their policies would lead inevitably to it. And God only knows what they want in their heart of hearts. You know, it's the postmodern neo-Marxist types who are always on about power. Every structure is predicated on power. Well, first of all, that's not true. But if you make that claim, then you have to ask, well, why exactly is it that you're claiming that every structure is based on power? What exactly does that have to do with your own motivations if you happen to be embedded in a structure? Does that mean, what, are you somehow immune to that if it's the only game in town? Or is it exactly what you're pursuing? And so, it's not like all the people who started the Russian Revolution wanted a bloody nightmare, but that's what they got. And there was a certain proportion of them who were perfectly happy with that outcome too. And so, no, I don't trust them. And I especially don't trust them because they're in a much better historical position to understand the consequences of their doctrines than people were 60 years ago or 100 years ago. Far better. We had the experiments. We ran them. Multiple countries. Multiple economic conditions. And the same thing always happened. It was complete bloody catastrophe.